Springhill High School was a quiet institution tucked away in the outskirts of a bustling city known for its lush greenery and rigid discipline. It seldom made headlines. However, one boy was about to change all of that. His name was Emmanuel Okafor, a final-year student in SS3, tall for his age with a lean build and a voice that carried a strange mix of authority and mischief. Emmanuel was the poster child of every teacher's frustration and admiration. He was sharp, white, charming, and carried himself with the swagger of someone older, but beneath that confident exterior lay a streak of recklessness. The school had recently welcomed a batch of National Youth Service C and NYSC for members, fresh graduates assigned to teach in the school. Among them were three young women, Miss Adora, Miss Fun, and Miss Key. They were vibrant, full of life, and eager to leave their mark on the students. What they didn't anticipate was Emmanuel. It all started innocently enough. Emmanuel was a natural flat, and his charisma didn't go unnoticed. Miss Adora, who taught English literature, was the first to fall into his orbit. She had recently broken off an engagement and found Emmanuel's attentiveness and poetic way of speaking oddly comforting. He stayed back after class, asking questions about Shakespeare, and while Sinka, his full eyes looking with her, she convinced herself it was harmless. But soon the lines blood red. Miss Fun, the physical and health education instructor, was different. A fitness enthusiast, she took pride in her discipline. Yet Emmanuel, with his unexpected interest in learning yoga and maintaining mental balance, intrigued her. She began offering him private lessons after school session that started with stretching and deep breaths but became LCED with stolen glances and subtle touches. Missy, the chemistry teacher, was perhaps the most unsuspecting. She was shy, reserved, and deeply religious. Emmanuel's approach to her was different, soft, respectful, and laced with a sense of vulnerability. He shared stories of his troubled childhood, of how he longed for guidance and inspiration. Kai saw herself as his mentor, and without realizing it, she too began to let her guard down. Over the months, Emmanuel juggled these clandestine relationships with the precision of a seasoned diplomat. He knew which words to say, how to make each of them feel special, and when to retreat to avoid suspicion. His classmates whispered about his unusual closeness with the co-members, but Emmanuel shrugged it off with a confidence marked. The turning point came during the annual school retreat. It was a weekend getaway meant to born students and teachers held at a secluded camp on the outskirts of the city. Emmanuel, ever the smooth operator, managed to steal moments with each of the women, fueling their emotions and deepening their secret connections. But secrets have a way of unraveling. By the following time, cracks began to show. Miss Adura, always composed, started acting erratically, snapping at colleagues and breaking into tears. During staff meetings, Miss FME, once the embodiment of vitality, seemed to lose interest in her fitness routines, her eyes darting nervously whenever Emmanuel was mentioned. And Miss CI, her once firm faith wavered, and she became withdrawn, avoiding her fellow co-members entirely. Unknown to each other, all three women had missed their periods. What followed were nights of anxiety, trips to clinics in distant neighborhoods, and the realization that they were all carrying Emmanuel's child. But that wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning of a brewing storm that would shake Springhill High to its very core. Emmanuel's absence created a sense of urgency and panic. The school principal, Mr. Adegbite, called an emergency staff meeting, but no one dared to speak openly about the scandal. The co-members avoided eye contact with one another, and the students, sensing the gravity of the situation, added fuel to the fire with wild speculations. Meanwhile, Emmanuel was Lying low at a friend's house in a nearby neighborhood, he was nervous but also arrogant enough to believe he could talk his way out of any trouble there. All calmed down, he told himself, scrolling through his phone to avoid thinking too hard about the consequences, but calm was the last thing on anyone's mind. Mrs. Banjo, whose initial intentions were to help, had inadvertently triggered a domino effect. A group of students overheard her discussing Emmanuel with Mr. Adegbite, and soon rumors spilled into the surrounding community. By the end of the day, parents were calling the school demanding answers back. At school, the 3 COR members were summoned to Mr. ADB's office. The principal, red-faced and visibly stressed, wasted no time. Ladies, he began, I need the truth. Is it true that a student, this boy Emmanuel, has fed your children? The silence was deafening. Miss Adora shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Miss FYST at the floor, and Missy clutched her Bible so tightly her nose on white. Finally, it was Miss Adora who spoke first. Sir, she said, her voice trembling. It wasn't supposed to happen. He was mature for his age. I didn't see him as a child. Miss Fun, emboldened by her colleague's confession, added, he manipulated us. He acted like he cared, like he understood us better than anyone else. We were lonely, vulnerable. Missy broke down in tears. I should have known better. I let my sat down, and now I've sinned against God and against myself. Mr. Adegbite was appalled. He leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. The scandal was bigger than he'd imagined. Do you realize what you've done? He asked, his voice low and stunned. This isn't just about you. This is about the reputation of the school, the NYSC, and even this community. Before anyone could respond, there was a knock on the door. It was a senior prefect who informed the principal that Emmanuel had returned to the school and was waiting outside his office. Bring him in, Mr. Adegbite ordered. Emmanuel entered the room with a defiant look, his uniform slightly wrinkled and his hands tucked casually in his pockets. Good afternoon, sir, he said, as though he were being called in for a routine disciplinary issue. The principal stared at him, as his expression a mix of anger and disbelief. Emmanuel Okafor, he began, do you have any idea the gravity of what you've done? Emmanuel, shocked, sir, I don't know what you're talking about. Miss Fun let out an audible gasp. Miss Adora shook her head in disbelief. Missy, still crying, couldn't even look at him. You don't know what I'm talking about. Mr. Adegbite snapped. 3 co-members, 3 adults are pregnant, and you are the common denominator. Now tell me the truth. For the first time, Emmanuel's confidence faltered. He glanced at the women, then back at the principal. Sir, they the ones who came after me, he stammered. I didn't force anyone. They liked me. The room erupted. How dare you? Miss Adora shouted, standing up. You knew exactly what you were doing. You manipulated us. Miss Fi cried. Don't act like the victim. Missy remained silent, tears streaming down her face. Mr. Adbag banged his fist on the table to restore order. Enough, he row. Emmanuel, you are a child, a student, and these women, regardless of their actions, were supposed to be a teachers. This is a failure on all fronts. The aftermath was swift and brutal. The co-members were immediately suspended from their duties pending an investigation by the NYSC. Their families were informed, and the weight of public shame descended upon them like a dark cloud. As for Emmanuel, the school decided to expel him, but his troubles didn't end there. The parents of the car members, furious and humiliated, involved the police. Emmanuel's family was dragged into the mess, with his parents pleading for leniency on account of his age. The community was divided. Some blamed the core members, entirely arguing that they should have known better. Others saw Emmanuel as a cunning manipulator who had taken advantage of their vulnerabilities. The story became a cautionary tale, a scandal that spread far beyond Springhill High. It was a tragic mess with no true winners, just Broken lives and lessons learned the hard way, and as Emmanuel sat in his parents' living room listening to his mother cry and his father shout, he realized too late that his charm and wit had led him down a path from which there was no easy return. Oh,